Hello and welcome to Cryptid By Region, Indonesia. Today we are continuing our worldwide series focused on a hunt for some of the least talked about cryptids there are. In saying that, we are taking a look at the area known as the Emerald of the Equator. To be honest with everyone, I originally planned on visiting Jamaica, but it is really hard to come up with a lot of cryptid sightings in that area. However, recently I saw a fascinating video clip of an unknown creature from Indonesia, and while I can't talk about it here, it did lead me down the path of cryptids in that country. As a heads up, be on the lookout for that video shortly. Fortunately for us, this country has a massive list of cryptids said to be roaming about, so I think we should be in for a good adventure. So join me as we venture from our previous location of England and head down to Indonesia. As with many countries, Indonesia has a very long and lush history. As such, I will note the most prominent parts, so as to keep this video within some type of consumable time frame. Evidence of humans residing on these islands goes back far into early history. In fact, the remains of a human simply known as Jawa Man, named for being found from the East Java province, were uncovered in 1891 and were at the time considered the oldest remains ever found worldwide. Although most modern residents in the area are related to the Austronesian people who arrived from Taiwan around 2000 BC. India soon started taking an interest in the area and eventually considered Indonesia part of Greater India. Following this, many Javanese kingdoms ruled through the years, including one of the most powerful named the Singhasari, which was part of the Mojopahit Empire. As an interesting note, Mongol leader Kublai Khan demanded tribute from this growing empire, and when denied, he destroyed the Singhasari kingdom. Jumping way ahead, the Portuguese landed in the area around 1512 with an interest in the spices found there. They were fairly successful in their expedition and expanded their control quite a bit, until they were nearly wiped out by the local people and the nearby Dutch. Around 1602 and the years following, the Dutch started to take control of Indonesia and established a city in West Java which they called Batavia, and is now known as Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia. The people continually waged rebellions for control of their land, but the Dutch remained in power until the Japanese invaded on January of 1942. In March of that same year, the last remaining Dutch forces were defeated. On March of 1945, Japan set up a committee to look at making Indonesia independent and to make the 1945 Constitution. Following the Japanese surrender on August 15, 1945, the first president of Indonesia, named Sukarno, declared the country's independence on August 17, 1945. The flag of Indonesia is very simple in design, but at the same time historically significant. Known as the Sangsaka Merah Putih, or the Red and White, it was first flown on August 17, 1945, during the Indonesia Independence Day ceremony. The red stripe stands for the courage and blood of the people, while the white represents purity and the spirit of the people. Interestingly, this flag has two possible origin stories. Some say it was derived from the one used by the Mojopahit Empire, who ruled the area in the 13th century. The other version claims that when the Dutch landed in the area, they replaced the local flag with their own. As a sign of rebellion, the native people tore those flags up, removing the blue stripe, and stating that the remainder of the flag represented them. With that out of the way, let's look at the cryptids. Indonesia has a super long list of cryptids just waiting for us to learn about. As usual, I had to separate those found strictly in myth and those that were even considered a spirit being. Which, there were a lot of those too. One thing that was shocking to me was that for a country that is surrounded by water, there weren't a lot of water-based ones. In fact, those that you do find are either mermaid myths, or what can be summed up as globsters, i.e. decaying whale carcasses. Starting off, I want to talk about the Ular Naga, or sometimes called the Ular Kuda. You probably will be excited to know that this creature is basically a dragon that made its home in a cave found on Mount Kaiching in Lampung province. Not a lot of description is given to this being, such as size or color, but it was said to have front and hind legs, massive wings, and his head resembled that of a horse. For years this creature would fly out of its cave, take children from the nearby village, and return home to eat them. In one telling of the story, a mother was out harvesting rice with her child nearby. Moments later, she heard a loud whooshing sound and realized that her child was nowhere to be seen. The odd thing about this creature is that it didn't attack by hiding in the cover of night, but it would do so on a sunny day. The villagers finally grew tired of the attacks and headed up to the mountain cave. They proceeded to block the cavern off with large stumps and rocks. After doing so, the attacks ceased. What is really interesting about this story is that there are images of the cave being blocked off, which you should be looking at now. Another point is that the description of the dragon is what many consider the European version and not the traditional Japanese one. This is interesting due to the Asian roots of the people. Keeping with this is a similar story from Bogor, where another horse-headed serpent was seen making its home in the Sipatahunan cavern. The only difference between this creature and the one from Mount Kaiching is that this being didn't have wings. It was said to be very large, but no other descriptions were given. Apparently, a team of investigators went to the cavern in 2014 and found that it was very deep and had its own water source flowing inside. They didn't see the creature, but they did hear something massive stomping around and odd noises. When they followed the sounds, it led them to the entrance of the cavern, and they found oddly shaped large footprints in the mud. Keeping with flying cryptids, we need to look at Gunung Halamun National Park, which is found in Jawa, and is said to house the famous Ahu. This 4 to 5 foot tall creature is covered in dark gray fur, has large black eyes, a monkey-like head with a human face, and large reddish leathery wings that are 12 feet long. Now, depending on the story, there are variances in sizing of all aspects, including larger and smaller. It gets its name from the sound it makes as it flies about at night. This creature is known to primarily eat fish, but villagers claim it will make a human a meal if it is given the opportunity. The Ahu isn't just seen in the air, as it has been seen kneeling on the forest floor. In 1925, a naturalist named Dr. Ernest Bartels was exploring a waterfall in Salak Mountain, and he saw this creature fly directly overhead. Then in 1927, he returned to the area and was roused from his sleep by the sound of the Ahu. He ran out of his tent and tried to follow the creature, but it eventually eluded him. I mention this being since a very similar one has been seen on the island of Seram. This version is called the Orang Bati, and it looks very similar to the Ahu, other than that this one has a long tail. Since the 1500s, stories have been told about this creature, and that it frequently attacks villages at night and steals infants and small children. It is said to make its home in the caves of Mount Karatu. In 1987, a missionary named Tyson Hughes stayed with the people of Seram Island for 18 months, helping them to construct a more efficient farm. While there, he was frequently told stories about the Orang Bati, or men with wings, but he never truly believed the tales. This all changed when he actually saw the creature for himself, and after his encounter, he is credited for bringing many of the stories about the beast to the rest of the world. Now, let's move on to one of my favorite type of cryptids, and that would be dinosaur-like. On the isolated island of Nuskabangan, residents have reported seeing an odd reptilian-like being that they call a Kawak. While exact descriptions are sparse, they do say it looks like a small dinosaur, walks strictly on its hind legs, is very aggressive towards people, hunts in packs, and has an extremely good sense of smell. Like something out of the movie Pitch Black, these creatures tend to come out only at night, and as such the villagers tend not to keep food out in the open. The island is so remote that the only electricity found is provided by generators. Even as such, the residents simply avoid going out at night to avoid the Kawak, but if they must venture out, then they keep a machete handy. These beings like to eat the dead, so whenever one of the villagers pass away, they move quickly to get the body out of the house. In 2014, a fisherman named Harry stated that one of his friends had passed away in the village, and due to the dangers of the Kawak, he decided to take the body away by using a boat. Not long after venturing out into the water, he saw a pack of at least 10 of these creatures walking along the shore, following the smell of the corpse. It is said that there are many stories about these creatures out there, but due to the remoteness of the island and the fact that travel to and from it is highly regulated by the government, not a lot of reporters venture into the area. Now, with this story, a lot of people claim it is either a Komodo dragon or a monitor lizard. From what I can tell, Komodo dragons aren't native to the island, but even as such, they don't hunt in packs unless the prey is very large, and they tend to avoid humans rather than aggressively attack. The other thing is that those two lizards can stand on their back legs for a period of time, but the Kawak are said to only walk on their back legs. Finally, when questioned, the residents said they're familiar with the lizards and said the Kawak looks completely different. In the Irian Jaya area of western New Guinea, there is a place called Murray's Swamp, and yes, it does have some type of creature, but it certainly isn't in the form that you're probably expecting. It was first seen by two villagers in a canoe on December 11th, 1999, and it has been given the apropos name of Murray. It was seen walking in the water, and it stood 6 feet tall, had short upper arms, thick back legs described as tree trunks, a long neck, and a slender tail. Its head was as large as a cow's, it had large eyes, and its sharp teeth were as long as a man's fingers. The skin resembled that of a crocodile, its body was said to be as large as a dump truck, and it was said to have large triangular plates running down its spine. While this description screams crocodile or alligator, the being was seen walking around on its hind legs. In 2000, missionaries armed with paleontology books visited the village and showed the images to the people. At one point, they grew upset with seeing one of the pictures, claiming that it showed what they had seen. From what I could gather, the picture that caused the panic was that of an iguanodon, but I could be mistaken. After this point, it was seen at least 2 more times, with one being as recent as June of 2013. Although I must note that with a lot of locations from Indonesia, it seems sightings aren't shared very often with the outside world. A similar creature was seen in a marsh just outside of Kokopo on March of 2004. This creature was nearly 10 feet tall, had gray-colored skin, a head like a dog and a tail like a crocodile. A woman named Christine Samai said that she heard people talking about the creature, so she ran to the swamp to get a look at it. There she saw the beast and claimed that it had a body that was as fat as a 900-liter water tank. As the beast neared, she said that she ran for her life. This creature then was blamed for eating 3 dogs from the village. The police went out into the swamp to hunt for it, but didn't find anything. So as usual, I couldn't talk about every cryptid this area has, so here are some honorable mentions. At this point, you shouldn't be shocked to learn that Indonesia does have Bigfoot sightings. These creatures range in size, and many of them travel in groups. Most all of them carry the name orang, which means man, and is followed by a separate descriptor. I do plan on making a video dedicated to all the differences of the creatures with orang in their name. Although I should note that the Ibu Gogo, Inwe, and Potiwolo are also Bigfoot-like as well. Speaking of big creatures is one known as the Genduo. It is a hairy humanoid with reddish-brown skin that can change its shape and size. It apparently likes to seduce women by changing its form to look like their husbands. While this seems far-fetched, a lot of villagers claim to have seen them, but rarely report the encounters, since they are fairly common. Bringing up another famous cryptid are stories about a chupacabra-like being that is said to live here as well. If the normal description of this creature wasn't bad enough, apparently this version actually has wings. The sagao makes its home in Sumatra, and it is described as a yellow-furred lion that has a short tail and is slightly smaller than that of a tiger. This being has been known to kill humans, and there is even a famous story from 2003 of one dragging a villager off in the night while cryptozoologist Richard Freeman was staying in the same area. I would mention the ropen here, but it appears to be found in Papua New Guinea, which it is its own country. Although it does share the island with western New Guinea, so the ropen probably shares the territory. Jawa has werewolf sightings where the creature is known as the Ajing Ajak. I couldn't find much about it, other than it is said to be rather vicious, and the name also describes a wild dog. So it is highly possible that it is either a mistranslation, or possibly a dogman, and not a werewolf. Speaking of dogs, there are stories about a creature known as a Jawan wolf. While there are fossils proving this beast did exist, some claim it still does. I found stories of dogs being called this name attacking people, but I can't be sure it is the same thing. There is said to be a 10-foot long giant pangolin living on the island of Rinca, and it is called a veo. To finish up this list, I would like to mention the being known as the benespati. It is a creature that is said to present itself as a fireball the size of a human fist. Although, if someone goes near this object, it will use that person's energy to grow larger and more intense. There are stories of it chasing people and in some cases, killing them. I understand this could be a spirit, but I like the story, and most consider it an actual creature. So as I end this video for the week, I really hope you enjoyed it, and that I made my viewers from Indonesia proud. I found a lot of cryptids in the country, and it really made it hard to pick and choose just a small handful. Well, I think it is time that I announce that with our Cryptid by State series, we finally have a winner between the Battle of Delaware and Georgia. I know it is still 2 weeks before that video, but I need some time to prepare. After a battle that went back and forth just about every week, we finally can say that Georgia will be next. It literally came down to Georgia having 41 votes and Delaware having 38. You all voted so much that I can confidently say that Delaware will be after Georgia, since the next closest state on the list only has 20 votes. And I know longtime viewer Metal Toad will be voting for Delaware on this video. You know I love ya. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.